Hey, and welcome back to another race. Tonight we are racing in the Fun is Fast series around the Champs-Elysees. We've got 3 laps. Distance is 6.6 kilometers a lap, 23.1 kilometers overall. Total elevation is 132. It's a pretty flat route. Long lead in, 3.2 kilometers. So that's always a bit of fun. In profile there, we've got to climb up to the Arc de Triomphe. And then down the other side, under the tunnel around the museum, and then back. We've got a bunch of C-grade riders signed up. We've got a couple of B grades. We've got an A-grade rider in the mix there, and also a D grade that's stepping up, which is good to see. Okay, we're in the pens. This race has its own kit, so everyone's wearing the same gear, which can always be a bit interesting to keep an eye on who the racers are. I'm in the orange cap as usual, but I've changed my bike up. I'm on a Cervelo. So I started changing the bike up on the weekend. Went for something a bit lighter because I was doing the Zwift. So I was looking for more of a climbing bike. And then today, given it's a flat race, I've tried to change it up to something a little bit more suited to a flat course. And see how we go. So we've got 32 riders in C grade, and we've got just under 2 minutes, a minute and a half to go. I really enjoy this course. I think it's a really fun course. I introduced this course last year when we went into lockdown for the first time. This was essentially the replacement for the Tour de France. So this is one of the virtual Tour de France courses. And you can see me there just double checking the wheels I've got on. I've got Zip 4x4s. Light and fast. Not the fastest wheel set, but certainly pretty capable. Yeah, so they introduced the France courses and Paris for last year's virtual Tour de France. And it was really fun to be able to ride this and race this. And it remains one of my favorite courses to race, which is really good. Okay, 10 seconds. Start ramping the power up. And we're out. Now, as usual, with racing, you want to give yourself every opportunity that you can. So when you're racing, give yourself the best pole position in the pens there. So join each event or join each race the minute that you can, and then you can come back to it. And so the next thing you want to do is when the race starts, put down some serious power out of the pens. That gives you every chance to get onto the front group and try and hang with that front group, because that is really the biggest tip I can give anyone who's racing Zwift. And if you can do that and you can settle into the front group, your chances of getting a good result at the end of the race are so much more increased. All right, so you can see from the map there that the groups have already split up. We've got two distinct groups at the front there. We've got roughly, I think, somewhere around 20 odd riders in this front group. As we come around, so we're still in the lead-in, 3.2 kilometers for the lead-in. It's probably one of the longer lead-ins of most races. I'm just trying to think. I don't think there are too many other races that have a longer lead-in. Now, I've not raced in the Fun is Fast series. It's been on for a little bit in Zwift. It's always a bit interesting to see the kinds of races or riders that join these sorts of races. You never know what you're going to get in other crits. Crit City, for example, you tend to know the races that get in there. They know exactly what the race is about. Most of them have done it numerous times, and they know exactly sort of how it works. In these types of races, you tend to get people that maybe haven't raced as much or at all joining in, and so it's always a bit interesting. You get some good riders that maybe haven't raced, and they might be able to hang at the front or even push the front, but then the dynamics change a third or half or three quarters of the way through the race, as they either can't keep it on or they aren't sure when to do or to execute certain strategies. So often you'll see them pop on climbs, and even though this is a relatively flat course, you've still got this little climb up to the Arc de Triomphe. And for those that aren't familiar with it or aren't used to it, if you're already in the red zone and then you're having to, make a climb, even as at 2 or 3%, it can still sort of give some riders a bit of cause for concern. Look, as always, my strategy with these races is to just sit in the group. I want to try and conserve my power as much as possible, conserve my energy. So unless it's absolutely necessary, I'm usually third or fourth, fifth wheel from the front or in the middle there. And really, again, if you're racing in Zwift, it's really the best place to be. And in this group, it wasn't too bad. Like, there was it was a solid group, and I think maybe if some of these guys have been racing, and I did check up on a few of the guys there, and they had done quite a number of races, so certainly some experienced riders here. So I could tell that they weren't pushing too much on the flats, knowing that they'd have to climb up to the Arc. So we come around on the Champs-Elysees Avenue. And we're coming up to the start-finish line. So we'll be finishing the lead-in. And coming into the first lap. I often wondered why they put the start-finish line at that point we just passed, and not at the second banner further up towards the Arc. It would be super difficult, and I guess that's the reason why, perhaps. But if they had the finish line at the top of the Arc, or near towards the top of the Arc, that would just make this an entirely different race. Because even though we've got a little bit of a slight uphill, even a very slight downhill just here, or just behind us, having to put power out up these sort of 3 steps would make this an entirely different race. So we've got this climb up to the Arc there, And this is the first of roughly sort of these 3 little steps. And then we come into a little bit of a false flat section here. And then we'll start climbing up to the second step. And this is where you really do, or where you really can pick out those that have raced here before, and perhaps those that haven't. A lot of the times you'll see a lot of the racers begin to use their featherweights at that first step. Really, you want to try and hang on to that for as long as possible until you get to, look, roughly not this crosswalk, but about the second or third crosswalk. So if I was to use the featherweight, I'd be starting it around about here, I think. Just enough to give you that kick up to the arch before you hit the flat around the Arc de Triomphe. You're still at 2%, and then it'll start to come down to 1% here. And then you can begin to recover. And you can kind of tell, like as I said in earlier videos, every race really follows 3 consistent stages. You've got the very start, you'll have the middle of the race, and then the sprint at the end. So you can see here this first lap has been that sort of that start. Everyone will begin to settle now and find their rhythm. And so you can see at the histogram at the bottom of the screen there where it's a lot of red and orange, not very much green or blue there. Heart rate's up at about 173. So I'll be looking to try and ease off the pedals here, get a bit of recovery in, knowing that we've got the downhill now coming up. Yeah, so 175. Even though it's a bit high there, I'm still feeling pretty good about it. Okay, coming back down the other side of the avenue. And look, that's not a bad spot. So clearly I've picked up the featherweight power up under, I think, that second arch we went under. I see a couple of the racers here have been using the drafting boost power up, and look, that's not a bad spot to use it. On the downhill here, it's gonna be a lot easier to pedal, easier to recover. But I don't know, I think if you're in a group like this and you're in the middle and you're going downhill, I really don't think that the drafting boost really does much, or as much as it could, when you get down to the bottom and you're coming around near the museum, using it there, or on the other side as you come out from the tunnel. I think that's a much better spot to use it. And I think you get a lot more out of that particular power up than you would coming down this slight descent. I mean, look, again, -3, -2, not big not a big descent, not big numbers, but enough that I think you can get a bit of a rest. And you can see that my heart rate's coming back down to 169. We're sort of hitting the flats here, and the power histogram down the bottom of the screen. You can sort of see a lot more green and a bit of blue there. So I don't think we lost anyone off the back of that climb. Well, not that I can see on the map anyway. I'm hoping we can shed some numbers in the next lap. Try and cull this group down a little bit. Thanks, Joe, for the ride on there. Greatly appreciated. Coming around. I would love to be able to pronounce this road, but I'm not going to try. You can see that I'm sort of just checking out the other views to see what sort of what views we get there. As I said, I really do like this route. I think it's a really good one to race. It's fun. It's it's accurate. Having actually driven up the Arc de Triomphe or up the avenue, up to the Arc de Triomphe, it's actually pretty accurate. I would have loved to have cycled it when I was there, but not able to. But certainly the look and the feel is really on point. Okay. So I think that I use the featherweight power up. I think they might be just here under the tunnel, coming up at the climb here. Or I might have held onto it. Yeah, I might have held onto it and used it at the end of this climb, going up to the Arc for the second time. Now it always makes me wonder when guys are using the aero coming out of a tunnel like that. Are they just hanging on? Are they too much in the red? I'm not sure the reason for using it there. I mean, if you're going to use it anywhere, I think you'd use on the flat or before we get to the next arch. But well, when you're in the red, you'll grab onto anything you can just to make the pain go away. That's for sure. Yeah, so still decent group. We've got some solid riders in here. We've got where's that B grade rider? We've got NASA. He wasn't in the Zwift Power. Bartley. So B Bartley is our B grade rider that is hanging with us C's. So I was sure to keep an eye on him. And then we've got, just looking at the list there for our A grade. Now look, there's lots of reasons if you're a B grade rider or an A grade rider coming into a C grade event. I mean, I've done it going into D grade. I mean, if you haven't been racing for a while, it's kind of good to get a couple of races under your belt, especially if they're not, particularly hard. You want to build back up again. So, yeah, certainly I understand it, and that's why Zwift Power is really good for normalising a lot of these results. You don't have to, if you find to hang on in C, you're a C grade rider. You're racing B and A grade riders. It's a little bit unfair, and a lot of these races they don't have any of the anti-sandbagging features. So some of these riders won't get coned if they're putting too much power out. And then you get a bit dejected when you can't keep on the front or you can't keep up with the front group because it's being driven at a speed that is unrealistic for the category that you're in. But this race wasn't too bad. This was right in the wheelhouse of the category in terms of the power. And not having guys blowing the pack apart. I mean, this core group, really didn't change very much for all 3 laps. All right, so we're coming up to the climb again. And the strategy with this, and with any racing like this, where there's a bit of a, just a slight, not a false flat, but it's not a climb. Anything over 4%, up to 5%, you can consider it, to be a climb. Anything over, that 2% is really a false flat. So we're sort of in that little, that grey area between the two. You want to stay in the front. You want to be able to see and make sure that you can see the front riders. You don't want to be caught napping and then have a group break away, say at the third step here up towards the arch, because it can be just that much more difficult to bridge that gap and get back on the wheel again. So stay at the front of these climbs. You don't have to be on the front, but as we'll see here, we'll see this group begin to stretch out as we hit this final little step. And there you go. So I've turned the power up on, just enough for me to help me finish that last step. Push the pace a little bit. And you can sort of see on the map in the top right hand corner how the group's being stretched out. Now it's not been blown apart, but you can easily see that there's a couple of riders there that are really having a hard time hanging on. So it's a much better strategy to be on the front, put some big watts down coming up, and then begin to recover more quickly than it is to be trying to chase all this way to bridge that gap with still being in the red. So I've picked up the drafting boost power up, so I know that I'm going to use that probably after the tunnel. I think strategically that's the best spot to use it. Yeah, you can see that we've got a couple of riders now that have come off the back there. So I think we're still around that 15 or 16 riders here in this group. But shedding a couple of riders off the back there is always a good thing. You want to try and hopefully you want this group to dial down to 10 or 8 riders ideally. Enough riders that you still got a bit of drafting effect going on, but you don't have to fight through so many riders if there's a breakaway or if you're coming up to the end of the race and you need to do some sprinting. You've even got a couple of riders there that are freewheeling. Yeah, I think that A-grade rider is just sitting at the back there. PO Auto Ceramic Speed. So here's our A-grade rider, just sitting around the middle. A Finbo. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. So Bartley still on the front there. coming down to that flat section. Yeah, he's just behind me, Finbo. He's riding a bit of a calculated race here. Another rider to look out for is Estlin and Ness. T-Ness. And Marcus Estlin and Torben. Matthew Marshall Webb as well. They've got some good riders in this group. Solid riders. And it's always good when you do know a route, you know where you can recover. And so from a heart rate at 175 up around the arc, back down to 166, 165 is really important. If you're panicking, you don't know where you can recover, you often let go of the pack. Knowing that you've got a bit of a downhill or a flat point where you can just sit in and recover makes all the difference in terms of your confidence. So again, coming past the Louvre, under the tunnel. And this can be a tricky spot too. If you're racing, keep an eye on that little spot there, because that can be somewhere where, if you've got some strong riders, a couple of strong riders in the front, if they decide to make a breakaway just at that little climb out there, and if you're not looking for it, they can power off the front here and easily open up a gap that can be pretty difficult to gap. To bridge. So, and especially if we're coming back up to the climb again, that can be the difference between winning and losing, even that far back from the finish line. Now, as I've said, when you're on the flats in previous videos, it's super hard, especially in C grade, riding off the front. It takes a fair bit of effort to do that. And quite often, if you're capable of doing that in C grade, you probably should be riding in C grade. And so, even though in the group or at the back of the group there, I'm only putting out 2.6, 2.7 sort of I2s, not killer power, but enough that I'm staying with the group there. So riding off the front, you're still going to need somewhere 4 plus, and you need to be able to sustain that for a little while to try and break it. And of course, it only takes 3 or 4 riders to be on your wheel for that gap to be bridged almost instantly. So it's but again, it's something to watch for. All right, so Have I picked up anything? No, didn't get anything on that under that arch. It's a bit of a shame. We can see some other guys here all using their power-ups almost immediately. And to me, that just tells me that they're really clutching. They're really trying to do everything they can to hold on. And it's always good. You can see so a couple of the riders there with the featherweight power up. You know, using it far too early. That's not where you want to be using it. You push off the front. You're not going to gain anything from it, and you're only going to be reeled back in by the group. So you want to be holding on to that. And as I said, as soon as you hit that second or third crosswalk on the third step is where you want to fire that off. And they'll give you just a nice little kick up over that last step onto the flat around the arch, and then you can work on recovering. And the group is stretching out. We might have, yeah, we've got one rider dropping off the back there. Looks like maybe a couple of riders perhaps. Now put in a little bit of extra effort just on that last step there. I just didn't want one or two riders getting away from us. I want to be able to make sure that, you know, there's a couple of us on the front. Because again, you know, it's easy to do when you're not thinking about it. So all someone has to do is put down, you know, another half a kilo or half a watt or a watt per kilo extra, and they can open up a gap that, you know, can be pretty difficult to lock down. So it looks like we might have dropped one or two riders there. Let's see if they can bridge that gap and get back on. Yeah, we've dropped one rider just coming up to the arch now, or actually a couple of riders. So heart rate reached 179 just there, maybe 180. We're still in the front. Marshall Webb, Estlin, and Finbo. Yeah, Ness is still pushing on the front there. Yeah, it's really easy to give in and use, say, your drafting power up on this downhill stretch, and trust me, you'd certainly be forgiven for doing so. It's not a when you're in the red, it's super easy to do anything to try and alleviate just the pain in the legs and the burning in the chest. But if you can hang on to it after this descent, you'll get so much more out of that power up than you would coming down here. Hey, I'm back. It looks like I fixed the camera issue. Not something that you want to do mid-race. But I'm lucky that it was a quick issue. Didn't require too much effort. And again, it's easy to get sidetracked on some of these things, and before you know it, you find yourself coming off the back just like this. But I was pleasantly surprised to see my heart rate coming down to about 160, actually a bit beneath it, 158. So that's pretty good. Came right down then. Now I'm not too sure if maybe my heart rate monitor wasn't reading properly, because I was sort of twisted looking at the laptop on my right hand side there, but and then look, that could have been it, because there's certainly a noticeable just quick dip, and then it's coming back up to 160 now. So I just don't think the connectors were against my skin. It's still at 160 though. That's I like that. That's good. Being able to get your heart rate down and recover quickly in races like this is it's a winning formula. Now we had one rider come off the front there. That was Finbo? Anders Finbo. He pushed right off the front there. I wasn't worried about trying to, get to the front and help bridge that gap. He's an A-grade rider. I know he's going to get filtered from the results. So that wasn't too much of an issue. And you can see that, again, the grip's pulling him back. Now, whether he's backing off the power or not, I don't know. I mean, look, he was sitting at 3.9. He's now back to 3. So maybe he was just giving it a bit of a test. And some riders will do that in races. They'll push off and see who wants to go or who can go, so they know who to look out for when they come up to the end of the race. All right, coming through the tunnel for the last time. And so my strategy here is going to be to use that drafting boost to power up as we come around and come back onto the avenue. I know it lasts for about 20 seconds, or I know it lasts for 20 seconds, and roughly speaking, at full sprint, there's roughly about 20 seconds-ish of distance between that right-hand bend and the finish line. I know that's where I'm going to put it on. So I'm deliberately sitting at the back of the pack here because I need the pack, I need that drafting effect to work with the rest of the riders in front of me. I don't have the aero power up. This is the next best thing that I need riders in front of me to make that work. Now I've got a couple of riders there that are pushing off the front. So putting in a little bit more effort here. I don't want to go racing them. One of them is Bartley, who's a B-grade rider anyway. And the other one's Anders, so I'm not too concerned about trying to chase them down, but as you can see, we picked them up anyway. Okay. Got the right-hander here, I'm at the back here. Maybe a bit too far back, if I'm honest. Probably should be up a little bit further. This is where it's going to go. So drafting boost is on, up on the pedals, maximum effort. Burning all my matches here. I need to pass these guys. Everyone's in the red. Boom. That was difficult. I was really happy with that though. That was good. So I don't know where Anders appeared. Like Bartley's there at the front, and NASA. Estlin, Marshall Webb, Ness, what's that, 7th? So decent efforts. It was a really good result. I was really happy with this race. So, didn't have the fastest time, although my fastest time around this particular route is 9 minutes 14, so 10:02 certainly wasn't. I'm gonna, sort my PB out, but really happy with that. Really happy with that. That was good. So yeah, we can see Bartley got flicked. Didn't have a heart rate monitor anyway, but he got hit with an upgrade. Well, he should be in B. Anders got hit with an upgrade. He should be in A. Roman again hit with an upgrade. So the race results: managed to nab first in the C grade of the C grade races. Estlin, Ness got third. Marshall Webb, and then the rest of the guys down there. So all in all, great result. Really happy with that outcome. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next race.